Aloha everyone, and welcome to the Hawaii Pacific Gerontological Society's March webinar. My name is Mapuana Ta'amu, and I am one of the board members for HPGS and chairperson for these webinars. I wanted to start by introducing the chat box available to us all. If you toggle around your screen, you will see an icon of a chat bubble with the word chat under it. Click that button and you will enter the chat room where you are able to submit questions or comments throughout this presentation. Questions will be gathered throughout the presentation and answered at the end. So please feel free to send in your thoughts, questions, and concerns regarding advanced care planning, advanced healthcare directives, medical aid in dying, or POST. If you aren't already, please consider becoming a member of HPGS so that you can stay updated and invited. There are various rates for individuals, organizations, and associates. Here are a few benefits you'll receive with membership. Monthly newsletters where members are welcome to submit articles to be published. We offer free monthly webinars, and members are eligible to be a speaker. Special invitations to general membership meetings, kupuna-related events and workshops. Scholarships to help anyone of any age pursuing education in the field of gerontology. For more information, visit hpgs.org. To become a member, head over to hpgs.org, and at the top navigation bar, click on the membership tab. Here you'll find more information about our membership benefits. Scroll down and click the link at the bottom, fill out your information, and click submit. Following this webinar, it will be uploaded and archived to our website at hpgs.org. From the home page, hit the webinar tab, and you'll be redirected to our currently offered, upcoming, and past webinars. This advanced care planning webinar will be added to our website no later than 1 week after today, so please feel free to share this webinar with your friends or family. All right, let's get down to business. We have gathered here today to talk about advanced care planning, what it is, why it's important, and what is this lime green document all about. Thank you to those of you who have submitted personal questions that you have about advanced care planning. We will get to those towards the end of this webinar. If you have any other questions, please do use the chat box to type in your question or any comments you have throughout the presentation. Now, I'm sure many of you are over the age of 18, might be a professional in the healthcare field, may be approaching your later years of life, or are like me and am a lifelong learner. Today, I've invited a few special guests with years of expertise and wisdom to help guide us down the road of advanced care planning. Jeanette Kojane is the Executive Director of Kokua, a statewide network of organizations and individuals leading a movement to improve care. Jeanette received her graduate degree in public health from the University of Hawaii and her undergraduate degree from Cornell University. Jeanette has worked in the US affiliated Pacific Islands, helping to develop palliative care programs through a collaboration with the University of Hawaii Cancer Center and John A. Burns School of Medicine. Hope Young is the Advanced Care Planning Coordinator for Kokua. Hope joined Kokua in 2017 and provides community awareness and coordinates the Let's Talk Story program for the Speakers Bureau. She received her BA from UH West Oahu in public administration with a concentration in healthcare admin. She started in the healthcare field as a certified nurse aide in a dementia unit and later moved on to manage a home care agency. She has enjoyed working in various capacities with seniors and the caregiving community for over 15 years. Hope is driven to someday normalize the conversation to ensure everyone's end-of-life wishes are expressed and honored. Our guest speakers today are Jeanette Kojane and Hope Young from Kokua. As an added bonus, they are joined by my fellow HPGS board member, APRN and local neurologist, Dr. Poki'i Balaz, who will be facilitating the presentation. Dr. Balaz, Jeanette, and Hope, thank you for being here today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to just have some fun and do our Let's Talk Story session with our two honored guests, Jeanette and Hope from Kokua. So let's get started. All right, tell us a little bit about Kokua.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's so great to be able to talk to HPGS members. So Kokua is a network. We are a coalition of organizations and individuals around Hawaii who is really committed to improving care. And we specialize in improving care for people with serious illness. So we have a variety of things that we are engaged in, and we really love people to participate, sign up for our free newsletter, come to our events. We really try to, our goal is that people that are in our community, that people are well cared for throughout their life. And we can do that by all working together to create a continuum of care. So those of us in this field, we know that there is not a continuum of care at the moment. There are gaps, things happen, but together we really hope that we can make that happen. So that's just a little bit about Kokua Mau. So our hui has been around for nearly 20 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're actually one of the only states that has it. So there's not a lot of states that have an organization like this, but for us in Hawaii, it's normal that we all get together. We're all taking care of each other. We're taking care of each other's mothers and uncles, and we all call each other trying to figure out how to make this happen. So for us, this kind of hui approach really works well.
One thing, so that would match in our culture here in Hawaii. But as Mapu mentioned, you're kind of like head of a movement. So I know you tell us a little about Kokua Mau, but what is this movement that you're creating here?
Yeah, and I think we have some slides, Mapu, that are a little bit in keeping with this, not to tell you what to do there, but okay, wait, so we'll stop on this slide. So Kokua Mau, so people often think we're part of the state, but we are not a part of the state. We're a separate, like HPGS, we're a nonprofit community benefit organization. And as I mentioned, we have members from across the community. So hospitals, hospices, health plans, churches, temples, all kinds of people who are interested in working in this space, as well as these passionate volunteers. So we work on a variety of different levels. So, I'm a public health person. I like approaching things in a systematic way. And the question is, how do we get our community talking? So the first thing that we do is try to be patient or people-centered. How do we put people and their loved ones at the middle of what we do? So the first thing is, how do we get people good information? How do we help people understand decisions they may need to make, and then to find resources and information? So we have a really well-managed and updated website. We have lots of free materials. I hope everybody is using them. There's no need to create new materials. Just use what we have, please. That's part of the membership model. If everybody kicks in something, then everybody gets to use stuff for free. And then we have this Let's Talk Story program, which Hope can talk about, which is basically getting out to where people work, live, and pray. How do we get conversations going? So that's one of the things we can tell you more about. The second area is really to help professionals. How do we help professionals do their job better? We know that this is not easy. It's not easy to talk about serious illness. It's not easy to talk with families. But we see if people aren't well trained, if they don't have the resources, that's also when a crisis can happen. So we try to prevent a crisis, or if people are in a crisis, have people find the skills and then those colleagues to help them out. And then the final thing we look at is, okay, how do we change the system? So we don't do lots with legislation, but what we like to do is, for instance, we partner now for many years with HMSA. HMSA has an in-home benefit called supportive care. Kokua Mau lobbied for that. We think of it as in-home palliative care. So people with serious illness can get good care at home. Palliative care kicks in long before hospice does. So it's important to not confuse the two. So palliative care can start at the time of diagnosis, extra layer of support, for these people who are still trying a last round of chemotherapy, they're doing some other more what we call aggressive treatments. That's when you also really need the support that palliative care offers. So working with HMSA to develop this supportive care, that's a huge game changer. Then when people say, what can I propose? Oh, great. If you have HMSA, UHA is one of the best benefits in the country. Kudos to UHA. And we're trying to work with all the health plans to have them up their game so that they can offer offer that. So for us, that systems change, sometimes it's something as simple as looking at somebody's intake form.
Mhm.
If you're only asking for a living will and you're not asking for an advance directive, then you've missed it, right? So we need, we'd like to see how do we help people. And of course, it's great if we can get it paid for. So we like systemic change. I will say I'm on my way later to the legislature because we have a palliative care bill. So hopefully that will move forward. But as I said, we really prefer to look, whether it's an agency or a company or a clinic, how can we help your systems to run better?
So Poki, welcome to our movement.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, you are part of
Happy to be
it.
here.
Exactly. And everyone else is welcome to join the movement. That's really looking, it's up on the screen, but a movement, I'd like a movement to describe Kokua because we're lots of people. We come from different places, and how are we going to make these changes the norm in Hawaii? How are we going to do that? And it takes all of us, and everybody has their perspective. Everybody's got their own network. So that's how we can, I think, make this movement a possibility. If we all take a deep breath and we talk to our parents, we talk to our loved ones, we talk about it at the church or the temple, we talk about it at work, all of those things, we can make these changes happen. But it's we're in it together.
Yeah.
I agree. And I will let people know, I've used their documents. I've had patients refer to their website or call them in. It really is a wonderful help and a wonderful resource that I hope all of you will at least look at or check out if all of your questions don't get answered today, or reach out to Jeanette and Hope. And there are two things when I was kind of looking over it too, was that, and I don't think people are aware that for Kokua, you guys know that you have no position on what people want for their care. You just want to make sure that somebody knows about it, as well as through the Conversation Project, you're trying to change the cultural norm from not talking about it, about death and dying, to talking about it. And I thought those were two really great points to make sure people are aware of.
Definitely. Yeah. So we like to use humor. So we have a couple of funny slides. Feel free to read it. But the mortality rate is still at 100%. So it is important for us to talk about it while we're healthy, rather than waiting for a crisis.
I agree. All right, so now we're going to start getting into people's questions. So could the two of you please talk to us a little bit about what exactly is advanced care planning and how does it help people?
So advanced care planning is an ongoing process. It's talking about, thinking about, writing down and sharing your wishes for care. It's really something that we should be doing while we're healthy, rather than waiting for a crisis. And that's why we're encouraging this conversation to be had earlier. So it's the cultural norm. So we're not thinking about all these hard questions during a crisis. A lot of people don't know how to start this, and we have a few tools that we use, and we like to get them out there so that people kind of get started thinking about what's important to them, what matters most to me, what makes life worthwhile. And that's what we really want to get people started thinking about, and how do we guide our care so that we're getting our needs met.
That's amazing. Mapu, can we take a look at one of the first polls, and how many people who are joining us today actually have an advance directive?
Sure. So there are 15 out of 25 people who have voted. Please feel free to continue voting in the poll. And out of that 15 people, 60% do have an advanced healthcare directive and 40% do not.
All right. So on that note, we have 40% of our residents who don't have it, but who needs it and why is it so important?
Good question. So everyone over the age of 18, all competent individuals over the age of 18 really should have their own advance directive. Once you hit 18, kids go off to college. It's not like you can automatically call if there's an accident and say, I'm the mom, can you give me information? HIPAA rules now say that that's not acceptable. So it's something that you should be doing ongoing and regularly. No one knows when you're gonna get ill. No one knows if you could have an accident. You could go out hiking and fall. You could go surfing, have an accident. Something could happen. And this is your way of making sure that your wishes are being heard by doing an advance directive.
I like that. And we'll have to jump in here and just share a small story. So I didn't have one either. I have one now. And I went to one of the workshops, and they said, who should have one? And I was thinking, well, my parents should have one. And Jeanette was up there and she said, you should have one. I said, oh, okay. So I went home and I started having that conversation with my parents, my other half. And so it really is something I think too many times we're thinking older people should have this and not realizing all of us need one. But we were talking a little bit, Jeanette mentioned about you explaining to us a little bit more about the conversation starter kit.
Mhm.
Could you tell us more about that?
So the Conversation Starter Kit, it's a very simple tool that we use to get people thinking about what matters to them. It's put out by the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, the Conversation Project. They actually created it so that people could get started talking about what matters most to them. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just how you answer. I like to call it a relationship builder, because when you do this with somebody and you want to learn more about them, this really gives you an opportunity to learn from answering the questions with each other. So to give you an example, I have a friend who, her sister was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. She's an RN and she knew exactly what she wanted. So she already made those decisions, but her family was in turmoil because everybody wanted to do something, they wanted to help, but they didn't know how. They didn't know how to support her. So she called me up and she said, help me with this. What do I do with this? So I said, sit down with everybody and have everybody answer, not just sister who's sick, everyone answer. And she called me the next day and she said, that was the best conversation I've had in the last 6 months with my family. So it's a tool we like to use.
I also heard though, for a part of this toolkit, you have the Go Wish cards.
We do. And actually Go Wish is actually available online as well. So Go Wish is a tool that's 33 cards and you get to actually put down what your wishes are. And I think, okay, we'll show the Go Wish afterwards. But Go Wish cards, they're really great. They're a tool that people use, things that people have not thought about. So what types of things matter to you at the end of life? What would be important to you? Would you want your sense of humor? Would you want to be kept clean? Would you want people in the room that you care for? And that gets you thinking, who wouldn't you want in the room? You know, really gives you an opportunity to think things through about things that you probably have never thought of.
I like that. I need to download those. I will after this one. And I want to go back because we're talking about the conversation and how important it is to have this. And I know that we put up a couple poll questions. Could we look at why some people have wrote in to say why they're not having this conversation? Maybe just 2 or 3, and Jeanette and Hope could give some advice on maybe how to deal with that.
Sure. So the question was, in a few words or sentences, why is it difficult to talk about end-of-life issues? And a few answers we received are as follows. It is difficult to talk about end-of-life issues because it means we are accepting that the end is near. We naturally associate that idea with giving up, and many, if not all of us, want to live as long as possible. Another comment says, it is very emotional to think of leaving loved ones or for them to think about life without you. And one more, talking about end-of-life issues is a difficult topic for families due to various reasons, cultural background, family dynamics, or simply because it's scary.
Great comments. You know, if you think back to childhood, what's that prayer that we used to say as a child? Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Why is it so easy for us to talk about it when we're little? Because it's something that's in the future, right? Well, that in itself, it just makes you realize that it will happen to each and every one of us. We will at one day no longer walk this earth. So why don't we start talking about it while we're healthy? So it's not so scary, because it is a scary thing to think of if you haven't thought of it in a different, it's kind of a mind shift. So it's about how you want to live, not necessarily how you want to die. It's how do you want to live?
Yeah, I think there is that realization, right? We all do only have a limited amount of time. So what are we going to spend our time on? And I think as a society, we'd be better off. I think people would spend a lot less time fixating on dumb stuff and looking at things that are more important. And I think, you know, when you talk to older people, like what's important to you, spending time with their kids, going fishing, going to the beach, sharing their wisdom, sharing what's happening. That's what's important, as opposed to like petty little stuff. So I think that, you know, take a deep breath, and we need to come to that realization that that is the case, and not to downplay it at all. Recognize that it is hard. Of course we want our loved ones to be with us. My mom died 20 years ago. I miss her all the time. But I can also look back and say, did we have good conversations about what was important to her? Did I help her throughout her life to have good care? Yes. Did we have good times together? Yes. Do I carry those things with me? Absolutely. So I think there's this, you know, we need to be brave. And that's part of, you know, one of the things that is good about the partnering with Kokua Mau is that our workshop, we come in and we help you figure out how to break the ice. So Hope and I and the 15 volunteers that we have, we've done this enough that we're willing to do that. And so I find sometimes people, like I remember once at a local church, the pastor even, he said, I've been trying to get my mom to talk about this since my dad died. And she wouldn't until your workshop. And we then could talk about it. And we talked about it for an hour and a half, and then we went home and we talked another 3 hours. And he is so grateful that we had that ability, that happened, whether it's the setting or the tools or just, okay, it's safe, it's a safe place to do it. So I think that it's, you know, again, that's why, and that's one of the reasons we really like working with faith communities. So we've worked with all sorts of Christian churches, a Buddhist community, the Honpahowanji, the Jewish community. We're actually having an event at the Jewish community on Sunday. There's today at the Kokua Mau meeting, and on Sunday, there's a visitor from California who's talking about spiritual wills and ethical wills. How do you not only talk about this, but write it down for your loved one? So there's a lot of ways to talk about it. And I love, people always say, you know, culturally it's hard. Well, I got to tell you, in no culture is it easy. So I think, yes, it's culturally, it's hard. And yes, in every single culture, we look to see, how do we care for loved ones? How do we support loved ones? How do we keep our family together? How do we listen to what's important? So, and those are all things that if you have time to talk things through, you have much better chance of that happening, as opposed to trying to make decisions in an emergency room with like everything. And unfortunately, we see a lot of stress in families. And when you didn't talk about it, you know, we have a colleague, he hasn't talked to his brother in 10 years. Because they didn't talk about it ahead of time, they didn't talk to their mom, and here we are. And that, unfortunately for us, happens a lot. So, you know, especially with people who say, wow, this will be really stressful in my family. Oh my goodness, let's start today. If you already know this is going to be stressful, very few of us really die in our sleep or, you know, die surfing. Most of us have more, you know, we're gerontologists, right? We know that there's like a decline. And I got to say, back to where we started, hey, let's concentrate on living. What's important to you? Let's make sure that's happening. How do we build what's important to us into our lives? And then, of course, listen to our loved ones. What's important to them? I mean, we are so lucky. We get to just hear the best stories. And people tell us stories of when their grandmother died, or they tell stories about this person or that person. And you get so many stories by being brave. So I'm not downplaying it. I just think, hey, we can do this. And I think, you know, culturally, it's so funny. People always say, oh, people don't want to talk about it. Oh my God, we never get out of a workshop on time. Oh no, everybody's got a story. Mm-hmm. No one ever leaves. No, everybody's got a story, and really good stories. So I could just encourage people, be brave and try it out. And as I said, we will come and help you get those conversations going.
And speaking on that, that would be our Let's Talk Story program. We have 17 volunteers, passionate volunteers that have seen what happens when the conversations aren't had. So they've seen the fist fights in the ICU. They've seen the fights in the hallways. They've seen families break down because they aren't having these conversations. So I have social workers, I have nurses, I have retired nurses, I have a couple of doctors. I have people that want to come out and talk to you. So if you have a group or an organization that would like to have a presentation, we'd be more than happy to come out and talk to you folks and have a full conversation about advanced care planning.
Yeah. The one thing I like when I'm listening to you guys is, as you're talking about, let's talk about living. It's not just about the dying parts. It's something we're talking about, like celebrating lives, celebrating life. So I really like that concept. Going back to some questions we have about logistics and advanced directive, questions are coming in about where do they keep it? Who gets a copy? Is it the same thing as a living will? And do you need a lawyer to complete it? Sorry.
Good questions. Okay, so are you, so this slide is about some of the tools from the Conversation Project. So this is an organization we love partnering with people that give things for free. This is good. So they have a bunch of cool materials. We encourage people to go check them out, and they're also on our website. So the starter kit is one of the things we use, but also how to talk to your doctor. What things do you bring up? My dad was great with that. He would always say, everything's fine. It's like, Dad, things are not fine. Let's figure out what we're going to do. Or else, as an engineer, he had a 27-point fax that he would send to people. So how to talk, you know, for parents of people with serious illness, people with dementia, and then there's another new one, which is how to choose an agent. So these are really great tools that we like using. So the next slide.
We talked a little bit about the Go Wish cards. They do have a digital version if you want to use that. But there are also cards that we use. We can bring them with our presentations and you can play them out. If you don't have the opportunity to be at one of our presentations, the gowish.org actually has a digital version that you can go through.
So then you ask about an advance directive. So let's be clear what an advance directive is. An advance directive has two parts, and this is something we cover in our training. So the first part of an advance directive, and probably the most important, is choosing what's called a healthcare power of attorney. If the unexpected happens, who will speak for you? And actually this morning I was helping a friend. His father-in-law had a stroke. They're expecting him to get better. He at the moment is not able to speak for himself. Who is the agent, right? So, and again, emergency rooms are not the right place to be choosing this agent. So if you think ahead, and again, this is part of these profound conversations, who do I trust to show up for me? Hope always says, who are my people?
Who's your person?
Who's gonna show up? And you can choose your spouse, but if you're in a car crash, who else? It's very interesting. Just take a deep breath and think, who are the two people you would ask to show up for you? So an advance directive, and that's part of our workshop, is, okay, let's be thinking about who it is, and you document that. The second part of an advance directive is what we call these individual instructions. And that is for individual instructions at the very end of life. Do your loved ones know what you want? So, but as I said, I think that the advance directive, the more important part is this healthcare power of attorney. So they need to know what you want, but you need to choose your people. So you asked a bunch of technical questions, which are really good. And also on our website, we have a handout. I always call it Felicia's Family in the Park. So you'll see Felicia Marquez Wong's family is sitting at a bench. On the backside of that, there's a checklist. So if you hear nothing else today, this is all about communication. So the first thing you got to do is talk with people. You've got to figure out who will be there for you, who will agree to be your agent. And then you got to make sure that everybody interested in your care understands that. If you've got 6 kids, let's choose 2 of them, but let the other 4 know. So people always say, you know, I don't really need this. I've got 4 kids. They're great. My husband's wonderful. My mom's still alive. And I have 3 sisters who are nurses. Like, oh my God, you are pre-programmed for a disaster. Do all those people agree? Do they know what they want? Who are you choosing? If there's any question, you got to choose people. So then advance directive, once you've decided that, the picture on the screen is our very simple Hawaii advance directive that people can download for free. So no, please don't pay an attorney $350 an hour. Theirs are no better than ours. But what you need to do with an advance directive is then complete it. So you do all that. You can either have it notarized or have 2 witnesses. And then you have to share it with all those people who are interested in your care. So if you're at a health system, they need a copy. Your doctor needs a copy in her files. Your agents need copies. Your family needs copies. All of those people who might show up for you. And, you know, if you haven't seen somebody for a while or they're the difficult member of the family, they need a copy too because they show up. We have this thing here in Hawaii, the daughter from California syndrome, because she shows up and she tells us that we're doing a horrible job and, you know, you don't have good care and I love mom more and I'm taking over, and she needs to know what the wishes are. So we have a checklist of what all you're supposed to do with it, but it needs to be widely disseminated.
And your question about the living will, they are different. So an advance directive and a living will are two different documents. And you want to make sure if you have a living will, update that with an advance directive so that you have your healthcare power of attorney. And you can include your wishes for care after that. And really, they should be going back and revisiting the document every so often. I had a training and a woman came up to me and said, thank you for having me look for my document because I had my ex-husband's name on it. And my new husband would not be happy with that. So this is not just a one and done kind of document. It's something that you should kind of be going back and circling back every life-changing event, maybe every 5 to 10 years. Just make sure the person that you picked is still the person you want.
Mm-hmm.
I had one question coming in about, is there no next of kin rule?
There is no next of kin rule. So that's really important in Hawaii. And that's one of the reasons, you know, these discussions are important for you to tell your loved ones, but also to give your loved ones the sort of help to reassure them that they're speaking with your voice. And for me, you know, with my mom, when she was sick, it was just so good to know that I had enough conversations that her voice was part of the conversation. And I don't have to carry with me, did I do the right thing? Did I speak up? I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. And those conversations, you know, I think it's as much for your loved ones as it is for yourself. And that's something locally, you know, people like, oh, I don't want to concern my loved ones. Oh, I don't want to tell them I'm in charge. I don't want to bother them. By not telling you, you bother them more. By it's bigger crisis to not talk to them.
And I guess the next of kin rule, basically it doesn't automatically go to your spouse. It doesn't automatically go to your kids. It doesn't automatically go to your cousin who you have to designate that. Right. As far as I'm concerned, my family is big enough that I would want to make sure I'm saying who I want in charge. I don't want them guessing. Mm-hmm. And that's really what happens if you don't designate that person.
And, you know, it's actually been quite reassuring I was thinking of some kupuna that we were talking with, and they're like, oh, you mean I don't have to choose my deadbeat son? I'm like, no, you get to choose. You know, or like, you know, my kids, I don't know if they do it, but my friend, she would do it. Choose your friend. So, you know, there's a lot of, it's important that people understand that there's not, we have much more of an ohana system, right? So you would say, wait, there's 27 people who care about me. Would it be, and I like Hope's story too, what if you're estranged from the husband? Maybe you're not separated, you know, but, and so unless you have a family of 0, I think it's really good to do that. And then we do have people who say, oh, I'm totally alone. Then look for somebody that you trust, a family member. Sometimes there are stories of people at churches would say, oh, okay, I don't have anybody, you don't have anybody, let's do it for each other. So I think, you know, and that's back to also what's important, right? Think about who's important. Are you, you know, and unfortunately we know there are people alone, and isn't that tragic? And as a community, we got to work on that, and not having people be totally alone. So Mapu pulled up some details about an advance directive, just so we're clear. It's the 18 and older. It identifies wishes for future healthcare. So Hope, you know, you'd asked about a living will. So a living will is more around what are your instructions for care. So an advance directive has 2 parts: healthcare power of attorney and this instructions. And some people call the living will the instructions. So one of the reasons we like to talk about an advance directive is because if people just do the instructions part and didn't name a person, it's mildly helpful, but really you need the 2 of them together. And nothing, you know, those of us working in this field, nothing is straightforward, what if this and this, we could try this and for how long, and should we try tube feeding for 2 weeks and then see what happens? So you need,
And oftentimes the language in a living will is extraordinary measures.
Mhm.
What exactly is that?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Because what it means for you might not be the same thing for me. So it
Yeah,
gives you a
yeah.
little bit more detail and opportunity to be more specific. I'm sure you know that medical advances can keep a person alive for quite some time. So this is part of what you're putting in there, is how much do you want to either prolong, not prolong? How much do you want us to do?
Exactly. On that note, as you're talking about more the abstract part of it, or not being straightforward, a question does come up if you do choose someone to be your healthcare agent. Are they, and we fill out this advance directive, you name them, you do the instructions, are they required by law to then honor those wishes, or because you chose them, can they decide to go a different route?
So the answer is that your agent is appointed and is acting in your best interest. So this kind of, we usually then turn it around. The best way to have your interests, to have your wishes honored, is to have good conversations with your agent so they know how to speak up for you. We see this happening when the agent hasn't had good conversations and they feel like, she said this, but I don't think she wanted it. I think this is more what she wanted. So there's that difficulty. But it's also, again, important to say, yes, your agent can make all the decisions. Your agent, you would hope that the agent wouldn't override your wishes if it was something straightforward, and then the doctor would speak up. But your agent gets to choose, and as long as an ethics committee or a team or the doctor would say, all right, I believe she's acting in the best interest of the patient, then yes, the agent can seemingly override wishes. But again, in advance directive, the individual instructions is usually pretty vague. So choose
they
well.
can do other than what you've written in your advance directive.
Choose well.
And I agree with that, what they're saying. So even when we set up my father's, he had some wishes that I don't think my siblings necessarily agreed with. I'll just share my stories. And so my mother chose me because I said, we had, like, and Jeanette and Holborn talked about, had a lot of conversations, and I said, I will honor whatever wishes you want, whether I agree with it or not. This is your time and how you want to live the last moments of your life. And so I think it very much goes to say, because all three of us children had very different views on how we wanted to take care of our parents at the end. So I think it very helps. Now we're going to switch gears. Everybody else wants to know what that lime green paper is.
Okay, good. So the lime green paper is a POST, and that stands for Provider Order for Life-Sustaining Treatments. So a POST is an out-of-hospital medical order. And it is then a documentation of a discussion with health professionals about what the care plan is once somebody is no longer inpatient in a hospital. So it's not something you do by yourself. It's something you do in communication with the health professionals. And it then goes home, wherever that home is, with the person. So it can go to long-term care, it can go to the home, it can go wherever people are. So one of the key, the bumper sticker is, everybody needs an advance directive, not everybody needs a POST. Do not confuse these two. So a POST then, the question then, who is it that needs a POST? And for us, the question is, so it's somebody with chronic progressive illness, somebody who's very seriously ill, frail. It's someone who, if you were inpatient, you'd be having a DNR order, a do not resuscitate order. And then the question that seems to work well from the research is, would you be surprised if this patient died in the next year? So it's not how long do they have to live? It's not that. It's, given their current situation, would you be surprised if they died in the next year? Some people say the next 2 years. So then when you have these discussions, it's in a different context, if you will. So like the first question, and that's the one that EMS is most interested in. So the reason it's bright green and it's on the fridge is that EMS needs to find it, right? You call EMS in an emergency, And then rather than starting from scratch, there's the care plan. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Here's the doctor's name and license number. She signed it. This is the plan. So if EMS doesn't have it, then EMS full code, that's what they have to do. Important to remember, advance directive is not a medical order. So you can show people an advance directive, but that's not something EMS is going to honor in terms of resuscitation or not resuscitation. Post medical order, portable medical order. So for instance, if someone, someone dies in their sleep, they wake up, you find that the person has died, you call 911. On the post, it says do not resuscitate. Good, then they don't have to initiate resuscitation. If they don't have a post or it says full resuscitation, 911 would have to run that code. So I think then that these are really important discussions to be having with people, and especially for us, working with geriatrics. The percentage of people that survive CPR who are older is very small. And that's actually one of the questions we always ask in the group. And like what, you guys probably can't ask questions out there, but what percentage of people over the age of 80 survive CPR? So they come kind of back to where they were. So you want to guess, doctor?
I am not going to.
Okay. So if you guess 3%, you would be right. So our standard procedure is 97% ineffective. So why the heck are, that's another question why we're doing this. But a lot of people then get all their information from television. And in television, it's about 75% effective. So if you're watching television and you see grandma and she goes down and they do CPR and then she gets up and then she looks good and her makeup's not even mussed, you're going to want that, right? As opposed to what CPR really is, which is this very invasive, there's a tube down the throat. There's a lot of pressure on the chest for those of us that do CPR, right? 2 inches. When my dad was very sick, coming to the end of his life with congestive heart failure, and we were doing a pulse, I was trying to imagine this man and what would happen, right? Would have broken all the bones in his chest. So this discussion about pulse, I think, is really important for people to understand. It's really important to understand, but it's also really important that it is not something you give the patient the form, take it home and go fill it out. We're having a conversation about your wishes and what the treatment is and where we are and what's going on. And also the level of treatment, right? Do you want full treatment? Do you want to take some things off the table, like returning to the ICU? Do you want to emphasize, no really serious interventions? What do you want? And that's what people need to talk about. So the pulse documents that. That's why it's such a powerful document. And that's also why we need all of HPGS folks to understand what it is, especially if you see that a doctor, for instance, sends it to all of his patients.
Yeah, we're trying to curb that because we're finding that doctors are trying to meet their measures. And so as part of their advanced care planning, they're handing out the pulse. If you're a healthy individual and you are handed a pulse, please ask, what do you know that I don't know? Because we're not advocating for people who are healthy individuals to go out there and get their pulse. It really is for a certain demographic where they're seriously ill.
Yeah, but super powerful, right? Without it, again, full treatment has to happen. So even for those frail elderly people with serious illness, all of that, AMS has to run that code. So how much better to be having honest conversations with professionals earlier, laying out what the options are, explaining where we are, explaining the possibilities. So again, that's why for us, training professionals in this, so they can do their job better. That's what we want. We want people to understand what this is. So we like to do this, in-service trainings as well. So a person with capacity signs their own post. If a person no longer has capacity, then their healthcare power of attorney signs the post. It's something that can be changed. And actually, if you think that a post is done at a certain point in someone's illness and then things change, it's very correct to have that post change. Post can be updated, post can be modified as needed as the person goes along their journey. But you can this is another thing. Your agent makes your choices, so choose well.
I like one part you brought up in this conversation for the post is I think a lot of people, you're talking to your providers, your physician, your NP, whoever, is like what they were saying, you know, if you're thinking about the person you're helping and you want this flu code, please ask what that means. I don't think a lot of people realize what CPR actually looks like, what the tube looks like, and not only at the moment when it's happening, but the after effects of doing this life-sustaining, and really make sure it's something that you and your family member would really want to go through, knowing what could be on the other end if they survive. And so I think thank you for bringing that up. That was really important. One of the big things, I think it's coming up, National Healthcare Decision Day. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So there's only two things in life, that's for sure, death and taxes. And so National Healthcare Decisions Day is an opportunity for people to go out and talk about this, complete their documents, do something, because taxes are inevitable, so is death. So they made it for April 16th, the day after taxes. We as an organization, we have decided that we're going to do the whole month of April. So if there's any events, we'll have them online on our website, and people are welcome to attend those events. If somebody wants to do an event for their organization, their church, their club, we're happy to come out and do that. We're just trying to really encourage it, and since death and taxes, why not, right?
So we're talking about just families, like we know you guys do a lot of events, but like if just a family of like 5, can they come to your office, or a volunteer can come and meet them and talk, or do you guys just encourage them to come to your workshops and the events that you host?
Well, we would encourage them to come to the event. Families, when they're small like that, a lot of times there's a lot of dynamics going on. And if they're in a place where there's not an opportunity for those dynamics to come out, sometimes they take in the information a little bit better. They're better able, and it gets the conversation going. When you're dealing with families, we all know what happens. We have our own families. If you don't have a family, imagine. So we encourage that type of, come to a presentation, ask for one at your church, ask for one, you know, so that you can be a part of it.
Yeah, and it's we look for people to help us identify those venues, because so I have a friend who's Hawaiian who keeps threatening to put it at her family reunion, but somehow the committee has never taken that up as a topic. But I think that, you know, Hope is right. There's a lot of family dynamics. I will say at Queens, there's a clinic that people can sign up for, this advanced care planning clinic that Lori Protzman runs. You just need a doctor referral and you can go, and they do like a 2-hour workshop. So that's something which I would, you know, definitely recommend to people. People at Straub, they can request it. People at Kaiser can request. So again, we try to work with the facilities as well to be able to offer that. So, you know, again, for people at different places, I would offer that. You know, one important thing that I see over and over again that Hope alluded to is that sometimes the health professional is super important in this, because they're not part of that family dynamic. And I think sometimes I hear people say, oh no, the family's going to decide. Well, it's kind of like sex ed, right? Oh, someone else is going to do that, not me. Fine. At school, at somewhere else, not me. Sometimes the family is not the right one to do this. It's too emotional. There's issues like, oh my God, you always loved him more and we did this, or when dad, you know, like we all know this, right? And there you've got, you know, mom is aging and you've got 84 years of dysfunction. Why is it going to be any different because we're talking about something really serious like this? As opposed to a social worker or a nurse or a doctor, someone who's trained, case manager, who can be facilitating those conversations. So that's why we really like to have professionals trained up so that they can do that. And you're not gonna solve 80 years of dysfunction. That's not the point. But you can really, you know, you can help with these conversations.
The other thing that maybe the viewers don't know is that you can actually ask for an appointment with the doctor for an advanced care planning session. The doctor, nurse practitioner asks specifically for an advanced care planning appointment. That way they're not doing it on your wellness visit. They're not trying to fit this into this very very meaningful conversation into a 7-minute visit.
Mhm.
You can take your time, ask the questions. If you plan to do that type of visit with your physician or your provider, write the questions you have down so that you're already prepared walking in and not asking them to give you more information. Ask the questions you want to know so that you can make your decisions.
Yep.
Yes.
And they can bill for it. If they don't know that, CMS lets you bill for it. So that's important. And you know, what Hope says, I think is so important. Like you can schedule that appointment. And how much stronger is that appointment when you've already had your discussions, you've gone through the starter kit, you've looked at the Go Wish cards, your family's all talked about this, or your loved ones have talked about it. Doctor, we want to share with you and we have some questions, as opposed to, my kids are kind of trying to kill me off. What's this thing? You know, so, and again, we know doctors are really busy, and doctors, I got to tell you, most doctors also, especially the ones we work with, they're like, you know, we were trained to have these conversations. So again, it's kind of like going to your doctor for a sex ed talk. No, they don't really know about that. And most doctors are hoping they're going to get better. And so geriatricians, we hope, are better. Palliative care docs are usually really good at this. And so they can be experts, but you kind of, you know, if it's your regular PCP, help her out by being prepared. I find doctors are always super happy when somebody is prepared for this conversation, as opposed to just, doc, let me talk about this piece of paper.
Yes.
So
I will have to concur. Coming prepared with questions really helps us out so we can focus in and making the appointment so we know when you're coming in exactly what to do or exactly what this appointment is for, so that we can look at it. And on the flip side, a lot of times when I'm having this conversation, I'll get the, well, doc, what do you think? What should I do? And I have to, of course, pull it back and say, this is not about what I want to do. Let's focus back on what is it that you want. So I think being prepared is awesome. It helps us out too, to help you out. So that's how we get that done. But everybody mark your calendar, April 16th. A shout out to my family too. Mom, John, mark your calendar. We got to review our documents. Everybody put on, do it your day after taxes. And with some of the remaining time that we have left before we let you guys know how you can get in touch with them and all their information, we want to go back to the questions and maybe see if we can answer anything else that hasn't been answered.
we have,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
what's okay, ask questions. What kind of questions do you
Sure,
have?
let's ask a question. Right, so someone is asking, when does the medical power of attorney authority begin? Immediately upon incapacity? What if lucid moments of capacity with intermittent incapacity?
Yeah, you know, that is something that is not always necessarily clear, but so the generic thing is when somebody is not able to make their own decisions, and it's clear that the decisions that they're making are not, that they're not able to speak for themselves. So that kind of moves more into the capacity question, which is something that physicians will, you know, there's like a form to fill out, there's something legally as well. So, you know, you sort of, as I understand it, when people are looking at this situation, is this person able to participate? Do we trust that what they're saying is valid? Then we can be listening to them. I think that, you know, it's not uncommon at all for people as they lose capacity to sort of start changing their mind. And this becomes so difficult for families. It's like, wait, his whole life he said, I never want to do any of these things. And now he's saying, let's just do everything. So that's when you really need those trained professionals who are listening. Much better to have had those conversations ahead of time, have professionals that you trust to figure out, you know, is this a real change of heart or is this something else that's speaking? So I wouldn't say that's a straightforward.
It's also important to say that this is why an advance directive is so important. Who plans on getting dementia?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't really plan to get dementia, but how do you help somebody who hasn't already created that document? How do you support them if they haven't told you who they trust to make those decisions? Now you're just going off of what they're saying and kind of guessing. Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah. That's where, like how you were mentioning capacity and competency really come in for people with dementia. And I try to always remind people, if we're hitting them up, please get all your legal papers, advance directives, all these kind of things in a row, because The capacity and competency part is for another talk, but there are some providers who are willing to write letters of capacity and some who don't. But we cannot determine if somebody is competent. We write letters of support. That is a legal process for somebody to be determined competent. That's not something your provider can just, that we can't just decide on our own. So there's a huge process to go to that if it's not taken care of in advance. One thing we didn't get to before we get back to the questions is we wanted to hear more about your volunteers. How do people who want to become volunteers?
Well, there's a number of, so if people are interested in the Speakers Bureau, that's something you can contact. Those folks tend to be more trained in these areas. So that's one thing. We would probably encourage people to come to events, first of all, and kind of see what they're interested in. We're always open for people who have projects or things that they want to do, but it's, we don't have a volunteer program like hospice. Hospice will train volunteers, they go out in the home, they do all that kind of stuff. We're always happy to have volunteers do things, but
we even have volunteers who they're kind of in the background. They're helping us get things passed out, help us with materials and doing things. There's a lot of ways to support us. So if you are interested, feel free to give me a call or an email.
Nice.
Yeah. So again, if the people are interested in knowing more what we do, we have this newsletter that's on the web, and you can sign up on the website. It's under a quick link on the right, and then you can hear about all the activities that are going on. So actually this afternoon at 3, as I mentioned, there's this up at the Honpa Honwanji on the Pali, this hour-and-a-half workshop on ethical wills and spiritual wills. But we try and talk about what different projects are going on, people, what are they doing, what's happening. If there's certain issues that are, very relevant, then we talk about that as well. So it's a really great opportunity to get together. So I think the main things are, and there's also for providers, there's a clinical case discussion every other month called Palliative Poo-Poos. So it's for clinicians to hear about how does a palliative case really run. And doctor, nurse, social worker, chaplain all talk about the patient. The last one we had was really moving because the son of the patient spoke and talked from his perspective. So very humbling, of course.
There's food.
Oh, there's food, right.
There's lots of food.
So we got the food and clinical and palliative care. So it's a great also community building enterprise as well. So there's a bunch of stuff going on. And in our newsletter, we also try and tell people about trainings that are going on, workshops, all kinds of other stuff.
Nice, I like that. So I know that we have time for questions, but I wanted to turn to this screen. I want to make sure that everybody is taking a screenshot, writing this down, sending an email to them right now so you can get correspondence, but please take this information down so that you can, if you have questions for your family, for your organization, for an event, you want to be a volunteer, the information is there on the screen. Please, we encourage all of you who are still online right now, if you can please send us in some questions that you're having that you would like Hope or Jeanette to answer. We still have some time right now, and we'd really like to get to what you guys want to know, because I've been talking this whole time, so I got all my things answered. So let's see if we got any more questions coming up that Jeanette and Hope can answer for you.
Yes, can you explain what a legal surrogate is?
Okay, so I would refer you to the Hawaii statute 327E5, which discusses surrogacy. It's not straightforward at all. In our world, there is, so for instance, this comes up around post. In order to complete a post, you need an agent. If you don't have an agent, if you haven't chosen a healthcare power of attorney, how is that going to happen, right? If you didn't go through the process to create a healthcare power of attorney, then there we are, we're stuck. Sometimes people end up going to guardianship. If people are inside of a hospital and they are trying to figure out who the person is that's going to speak for them, they can, and the person can't speak for themselves. As long as a person speaks for themselves, good to go. There is a process to determine what is called the non-patient designated surrogate. That's exactly from the law.
Yeah.
So the patient didn't designate the surrogate because the patient cannot speak. And what happens is it's a process where a social worker or a nurse or whoever goes out and tries to find all the people interested in their care. Again, back to Hawaii law and this Ohana thing. Who is interested in this person? Pull them all together and decide who's the spokesperson. So if, for instance, they're inside a facility, there's a form that you can complete, and the University of Hawaii Elder Law Program has a model of the non-patient designated surrogate form, and then that is filled out, and then that person is then able, for instance, to sign a post. When they leave the facility, that non-patient designated surrogate form no longer is valid, so they can end up in different programs, but at least they can have problems, but at least then they have a post. So these are the kind of things that you can avoid by doing this ahead of time. But it's unfortunately, that's why we also have guardianship, is that families can't agree, they can't find anyone to speak for the person. So as long as the person can speak for themselves, they can determine who their person is. So it's also important in the medical world, the word surrogate is often used just like in common speech, meaning agent. But it's really important to remember from a legal perspective, the surrogate is then usually this non-patient designated surrogate.
And they don't have the same authority as a healthcare power of attorney, right?
That's right. Yep.
Any other questions?
Yes. Christy's asking, is a power of attorney able to make a change in advanced healthcare directive and post for a person who no longer has decision-making capacity?
No. So a power of attorney is in charge of stuff. That's the will, the money, who gets the car, who gets the house. Power of attorney is in one category. Healthcare power of attorney, that's around medical stuff. So the power of attorney has no say over medical issues. Just similarly, the healthcare power of attorney has no say over these kind of money, assets, whatever. Is that the question?
Yes. So is the healthcare power of attorney able to make changes in the advanced healthcare directive and post?
So healthcare power of attorney is designated through the advanced directive. So you wouldn't be changing an advanced directive, but you would be but you can change a post. So the healthcare power of attorney is designated through the advanced directive, and then they have then the power to sign or to change a post if the person no longer has the capacity to do that. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, that's great. My husband's advanced directive is not to prolong life, no life support wanted. Is it contradicting if his post is full code?
So excellent question. At the surface, what I would say is that warrants a conversation. Why is the post full code when his advanced directive says do not resuscitate? It could be that he's decided, or that the medical team says he's very far from the end of life and there's still some chance that we would do this. It's a big red flag for me. I would say that warrants a conversation with the team that completed the post to figure out why is that discrepancy there. Yeah, so that's my advice. Go figure out if that still makes sense, and if good conversations happened to get him a pulse that says full treatment and full resuscitation.
It's also important to say that if you're wanting CPR, you're agreeing to the full scope of the treatment. They're not going to bring you back to put you on comfort measures. That just, if they're going to try and resuscitate you, that means you agree to ICU. That means you're agreeing to the intubation, whatever's happening to support that life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's very important.
Cool. How long are your Let's Talk Story sessions?
We like to do 2 one-hour presentations. The first session is getting people started thinking about doing the conversations kit, doing the Go Wish cards, kind of getting you thinking about what your wishes are. And then the second section would be on the actual advance directive and the post. We also give you the opportunity to complete it. If it's either Jeanette, I, or one of our volunteers that are there, we can actually notarize for you as well so that you get your document completed. So 2 one-hour sessions is what we found works best.
We really like the two-parter because you give people a chance to go home, go find your advance directive, go talk to your people, think about this a little bit. We find it's much better. And also that the document then has much more validity because people aren't just checking boxes. So we don't really like advance directive health fair kind of a thing where everybody just signs a form. Was there a conversation? Did you talk about it? Did you think about it? You know, there were questions before about tube feeding or things like that. You know, we need people need a chance to ask these questions. You're asking life and death questions. People should understand what this is about. This is not just a simple, easy thing. So, and then, you know, you find out that your ex-husband's your agent. So whoops, okay. So go find those forms, figure that out. And then it also, you know, I think then it sinks in differently.
It also gives you a chance to find out whether you're picking the right person. So we have a member who, when she completed her advance directive, she handed it to her husband and said, honey, can you honor this? So he read it and he said, oh no, I'm going to keep you alive forever as long as possible. She said, well, that's not what I want. She went to her son, and the son said, I got it, Mom, we'll just pull the plug. So she realized that's not the person. So when she finally found the person, it was because she found out who couldn't be the person, right? She had to ask these questions, but it wound up being her daughter that understood that, you know, she may do well with certain treatment, and if it's not helpful, then different decisions need to be made. But that between sessions, that gives the attendees the opportunity to have those conversations and figure it out. We are able to do it in one single session, but we find that that's the point that people they're not too sure if they can pick that person.
They
So-
kind of need to let it sink,
Yeah.
simmer, and
And we really like doing things with professionals that helps them to think about their own wishes first, because oftentimes professionals like busy helping everybody else and they don't understand, for instance, why this is complicated. And then you do it for yourself. It's like, oh, okay, there's, you know, Uncle Charlie who did whatever, and then this dysfunction and that thing and whatever. So it's like, oh my gosh, I had to talk to my mother about death and dying. This was the first time, you know. So I think it helps for for us too, because, you know, and besides, we're people, and all of our people come to us with our questions. I've had 3 people in the last 2 days. What's palliative care? How do I get hospice? Should I be getting a healthcare power of attorney? What, you know, like everybody comes to us. So much better have good information. And then we feel so much better that we're helping our loved ones to avoid a crisis or help with a crisis. So that's why we want people to have good information. You know, the staff of Kokua Mau is here in this room. So we don't want everybody to say, oh, just call Kokua Mau and they'll help you, because we can't do that. We want to train you so you have good skills. And then you call us with the weird ones, you know, like, oh my, like last week, this person wanted to fill out a post. Her dad is home with full ventilation, full tube feeding. I was like, okay, let's get a doctor involved here, because this is, so I like the strange ones and the thing, but I want people to have their own, you know, they need their own skills and their resources. So.
How can we get an education on advanced healthcare directive and post at our all staff meeting one month?
You can invite us to come. Contact us. We can work with you on that.
Great. And would you be able to explain the difference with a revocable and or irrevocable trust?
No. No, then you should be, I would encourage you inviting an attorney. So we had a presentation by an attorney a couple years ago, and it was just so interesting, because it's so clear that for certain things you really need an attorney. If you're setting up a trust and a will, and, you know, depends on, some of them are simple, whole bunch of stuff is not simple. And she gave us all kinds of really interesting examples of how people had set up powers of attorney that then caused all these other problems. So I would encourage you to have a speaker who can talk to those legal issues. And the University of Hawaii, the UHelp program, Elder Law program, they have great speakers. Yeah.
Okay, last question. How beneficial is it to keep feeding a patient when they are on hospice? Mom has a brain tumor, is unable to speak, and has limited range of motion, but our family doesn't want to starve her, so we try to put vitamins in her liquids and food.
We'll defer to the doctor on this one.
So although I will give a short answer, what I would say is I think the question, she is on hospice, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first thing to do is to really call your hospice nurse and have the conversation with them and have them explain there should be a nurse or a case manager, and then there is a medical director that that you can talk to. And then saying that, I think that you know, we need to think about the person that we're helping versus us and what we think. And I had this conversation with my mother. In fact, my father was on a hospice, and for my mom, culturally, we're Hawaiian, right? We show love, and taking care of her husband meant to feed him and keep him healthy. And so it was a very hard concept for her to understand that she didn't need to be feeding him every 2 hours his, you know, best food. And when the nurse first brought it up, she was very upset, because to her that meant she was not taking care of her husband. And so we had to meet in the middle. Although understood where hospice was coming from, I also needed to understand my mother's needs and what it meant to her culturally. And so we came together and kind of met in the middle. So I wouldn't say necessarily what you're doing is wrong, because you have all good intentions, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's talking to your hospice nurse about what your guys' plan is and what you want, and what Jeanette and Hope were talking about. What was Mom's conversation? What did she want? Did she want to be prolonged? Did she not want to be? And just to let you know that when the body is shutting down, you are not starving them, and you are not, when you're not giving them water, you're not causing them to be like in this state of wanting thirst. You can do things like rub water in the mouth, and that just helps. You're not necessarily giving water, and there could be other issues. I don't know if Mom has swallowing issues. So there's a lot of things that you need to talk about, and so please call your hospice. And that was not a short answer, I'm sorry.
So we actually have a great handout. That was a really good answer, doctor. You know, we have a handout on tube feeding. I would encourage you to read that. Also talk to the hospice. Again, we feed each other all the time. And I think, you know, we get cranky if we miss our snack in the morning, as opposed to really, as someone is dying, they don't need that. And I've done things before where we all ate and the person loved the smell of the food, but they really couldn't do that. So that's a really important question. It's one of the big questions that comes up for us. So read the tube feeding the handout and talk to hospice. The hospice folks, you know, they love to know what you don't know, so they can explain that.
All right, so I think we're at the end of our time. So I want to thank all of our guests for joining us today, and especially thank Jeanette and Hope for coming in and explaining so much to us. Thank you guys for all your wonderful questions. I hope you got their contact information and you enjoyed our little Let's Talk Story session, and we'll see you all next month.
Real quickly before we go, I'm Mapuana Tamu. I wanted to let you know what is happening next month. In April, we are having Eileen Phillips, who is the registered nurse here at Attention Plus. They are so gracious to let us use their conference room. And she will be talking about levels of care in our community. So this flyer has not been sent out yet, but when it does, that is the highlighted registration link that you can copy and paste into your browser so that you can RSVP for your seat. Otherwise, you can send me an email at hpgsmembers@gmail.com for more information. And that is when it is, Thursday, April 25th, same time, 11:30 to 12:45. And a few of the learning objectives. If you have any other questions on levels of care in your community, maybe about the place that your loved one is staying at currently and have some questions, then you can always send me an email at hpgsmembers@gmail.com. Oh, there it is. So good. And last but not least, our general membership meeting for members is on Thursday, April 18th. That'll be in the morning from 8:30 to 10:30 at Abe Lee's classroom. I think it's in the Almoana Pacific building. I'll give you the information later on in the flyer form. And the topic will be dementia care, tips, tricks, and resources in our community. We will be joined by Dr. Poki Ibalaz, Jody Mashan, and Cindy Osajima, talking more about dementia care. So if you have any questions for them or you want to attend, please send an email to hpgsmembers@gmail.com. And remember, the conversation starts with you. So please do start conversations with your loved one. Visit kokuamau.org so that you can get these forms that are free and accessible to everyone. Other than that, if there are no other questions, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.